Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. This morning, we're joined by Rosanne Johnson. She's the Clinical Research Budget Analyst and Certified Research Coverage Analyst of the CTRC. She'll be discussing clinical research budgets with us today. As we go through the session, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat and we'll bring them up as soon as possible. Please be aware that we may push questions to the end of the session if needed as well, just depending on time. So Rosanne, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll just hand the session off to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's talk about clinical research budget. So the first thing that happens to get your budget into our systems is you have to enter your study specifically into the central study registration. Once that happens, your ENCORE team builds a calendar from the schedule of events in your protocol. The calendar and the coverage analysis, which are one item, are sent to the site to the site for approval. Then that coverage analysis can be used to create a budget template. From that, we can request pricing and your services that are needed that are specific to your budget. Then we can start negotiations for you, send terms to the sponsor, and then at the end, the contract group sends the budget back to the clinical research office for final approval to make sure the correct final agreed upon budget is in the contract. The final budget then gets entered into ENCORE for financial tracking. So let's talk about the importance of the central study registration. By entering your study into the central study registration, it keeps you from having to enter the same information multiple times. Once this is entered, the ENCORE team builds your calendar or your protocol billing grid from the schedule events of the study protocol. The calendar or the protocol billing grid are then sent to the study site for review and approval, and the study team and the PI also need to indicate on that calendar what is covered by the research study and what is billable to a third-party payer, standard of care or SOC. The billing grid that is generated for you is also your calendar and ENCORE for your study visits. So you please need to review this and tweak this accordingly if necessary. When entering your study into central study registration, you can also indicate if you need budget help at the time. So then we would negotiate that for you. There's also other items you can indicate that you need help with. And lastly, by entering this into the study registration, central study registration, the account setup and the funding proposal are done for you. So the importance of the PBG or the protocol billing grid coverage analysis and the review of the calendar, you should review the protocol and your schedule of events to determine what is standard of care, if anything, and what is paid by the research. The ENCORE team creates this calendar for you. It's sent to you. You designate what is standard of care and what is study on that grid. Then you send that back to the CRO for review. We review that against the NCDs or the National Coverage Determination and LCDs, the local coverage determination, where appropriate. And we will make adjustments if necessary, go over those adjustments with you to finalize it, and then we will send you a finalized signed copy of your coverage analysis for your records. Make sure you understand the calendar and how it will work in ENCORE, since this will impact your budget and the invoiceables in your study. The template or the completed coverage analysis then can be used to create your study budget. It is important that a coverage analysis be done in every clinical trial to ensure billing compliance. We don't want to bill the insurance for something the study is reimbursing us for, but in the same respect, we want to be reimbursed for the items the insurance will not pay for. The university's stance is that a coverage analysis must be completed for every clinical trial, or a letter of determination from the clinical research office must be obtained. So basically, building a budget, our financial goals are, when you're building your budget, you want to cover your costs. So costs versus revenues. So if your costs are more than your revenues, this is bad. You are now supporting the industry. If your costs equal revenues, this is tolerable, but not great. If your costs are less than revenues, this is good. You have more for your salaries, you have more for residuals. Understanding your costs, make sure that you're including personnel, your research coordinators, lab techs, administrators, investigators, the space, it may be covered by IDC, but someone is paying for it. Supplies, paper, dry ice, phlebotomy, equipment, if you have to purchase equipment specifically for this study, or if you have to maintain equipment, services like fax, phone, internet, IRB fees, pharmacy fees, lab fees, radiology fees, and don't forget at the end of your study, your storage archive fees. Before budget negotiations begin, you need to figure out your costs. So for a simple example, you need to cover one research coordinator time and the PI's time in a year. We'll estimate this as $50,000 total needed in a year. To cover this $50,000, how many patients do I need to enroll? In your budget, if you're receiving $10,000 a patient, for example, before overhead, you would have to enroll at least 5 patients just to cover your personnel. Some of the site level costs can help with this revenue as needed as well. The number of patients you enroll makes a big difference in negotiating a sufficient margin. Therefore, a feasibility analysis is absolutely necessary before negotiating your budget. If you cannot cover your costs, there's no need to proceed. This is an example of a per patient budget. I just did a basic budget for a year, put that all these costs, were being paid by the study. If you see that we have like a $10,000 that you're going to earn before overhead. So in this example, for every patient I enroll and who completes this study, I'm going to keep $10,000. Therefore, I must enroll 5 patients to achieve the target of 50,000. So budget negotiations. We welcome the sponsor to UB. We send our terms and our site level fees to the sponsor. We use the calendar or scheduled events to build the coverage analysis and the budget, and we compare that to the sponsor budget. We then make edits where they're appropriate. We'll request pricing for services or procedures needed for this study, for example, an echo, blood tests, biopsies. You also should pay attention to your footnotes in your scheduled events. Make sure you're getting pricing for everything that is needed. Please note, in more complicated studies, we request that the lab requisition and radiology forms are filled out and sent back to us at the time of the coverage analysis review, so we can get correct pricing and set up fees from our affiliates and build them into the budget. Device studies must have an IDE, an investigational device exemption letter. The CMS letter, which is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services letter, and an NCT number, a National Clinical Trial number, for that device to be billable. The proper entity also needs to be notified of the study, and most likely a purchase agreement for the device will need to be in place for the proper entity, with that proper entity for the device. Once the initial budget has been completed, this gets sent back to the study team for review and approval. Then the budget negotiations are started. If you negotiate your own budget, be aware this will have to be approved by the CRO before you can finalize this with the sponsor. Do not wait until the contract is in process of being signed to get this approval, since this could hold up the signing of the contract. Approval can be obtained by myself or Pam Anderson. If we are negotiating for you, the study site terms will get sent to the sponsor along with the budget edits, and we will work with the sponsor and the study team to finalize the budget. When reviewing your budget, please. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Roseanne. Mary has a question. If the sponsor's providing the device, does the same thing apply as far as that?
Yeah. So even if the sponsor is providing the device, the entity that you're doing the study through, so say you're at ECMC, they still need to be aware of this happening. And a lot of times just a agreement is put into place because they have to track the device for insurance purposes, whether or not it's getting billed to the insurance. There's usually, even if they're, giving it for free, I think Pam always makes sure that the entity is involved, and then the entity decides whether or not they want a purchase agreement. I hope that answers her question. Pam is really good source for the devices. So if you have more questions about that, I would reach directly out to her. Okay, so when you're reviewing your budget, please make sure you are receiving enough to cover your costs. So for example, if your costs are more than your revenue, like we stated below, you're supporting industry. Our goal when we're negotiating budgets is to receive more revenue than costs, so there is more for salary and more for residuals. A comment on residuals. This allows for sustainability. It provides support when activity is slower. It provides support for less profitable studies that have great merit. It allows for further academic investment, expansion of a program, or investigator-initiated trials. The reason for the CRO budget approval and site level fees for all clinical trials. The CRO approval reviews all the fees to ensure that all the institutional fees are captured in your budget. It keeps us from fraud. It's keeping our site level costs consistent. It helps us with negotiating future budgets. The site level costs can help receiving funds to get reimbursement for the time and effort put into the study. So for example, the startup fee and the closeout fee, this is time and effort put into the study before you enroll patients and after you're done enrolling patients. So these fees help cover that time. If you negotiate your own budget, you can pass the buck per se and let the sponsor know these costs are set at the university level. Sponsors are and will become familiar with our site level costs since these are consistent with previous budgets that have been negotiated. Our terms are always available upon request if needed. Example of site level costs, like I said, startup fees and closeout fees, pharmacy fees, coverage analysis fees, SAE fees, IND reports, monitor fees, dry ice, administrative submission for the IRB fees, additional training fees, PI oversight fees. There's also been new policies on overhead and PI oversight that were implemented. As of March 2017, the university changes policy on how the 26% overhead is charged for clinical trials. There are no longer pass-through costs. All charges incur the 26% overhead, for example, on startup, monitoring, pharmacy fees, stipends, that overhead gets charged. Keep this in mind when you're negotiating your budget. You will be billed the full charge for the site level costs, and the university will still get their 26%. Meaning if you only negotiate $2,500 for pharmacy fees and are billed $2,500 for pharmacy fees, you will still be paying the university the $650 fee for the overhead on that charge, and that'll come out of your total budget. Also, as of June 2021, the new policy was put into place that requires at minimum a 1% faculty salary to be charged to the industry clinical trial budget for PI oversight. The CRO, if we're negotiating your budget, we will make sure that this is in your budget startup.
Rosanne,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a question for Mary or just a comment, but she was mentioning that hospitals now have fees for doing research as well. So I'm not sure if that's asking if you take that into account as well, or if Mary, you want to just speak up.
Yeah, so all of the entities that we do business with charge premises fees. So we incorporate that into your budgets. We have agreements with ECMC and we have agreements with Kaleida. So if you're doing research with either one of those entities, we know what those charges are, and those are always included in your site level costs. If there's other costs on top of that that you're aware of and that we don't know about, I would be surprised, but Usually when you first start a study, we do reach out to those entities, and there usually is a statement of work put in place with those groups for any pricing that we get and for the premises agreement. So NIH federally funded.
Sorry, just one more
No
question on
problem.
that last one. Yep.
Yeah.
So Judith was asking, is the 1% faculty salary charge IFR?
Yeah. Yes. The sponsored SPS sponsored projects, sponsored programs, they actually do that. They pull it out. We don't have anything to do with that, but that gets pulled out. They figure out the 1% of the state line of the principal investigator, and that gets pulled out and it gets put into the IFR. That is correct. I did include a link to that policy at the end of this, one of my slides. So I believe it states like how they go about that, or an idea of how they go about that. So NIH federally funded flow-through and industry-funded clinical trials will all be set up in ENCORE. Please note that it is the study staff responsibility to enter data timely in ENCORE. This ensures we are invoicing and tracking payments from sponsors in the most efficient manner. The subject enrollment information is also necessary for reporting purposes, as well as for providing information to departments regarding specific demographic data for grant writing. Please reach out to the ENCORE team if you have any questions or need clarification. We are here to help.
All right, one more question.
Sure.
Kara's asking, what about PIs who do not have state lines? So I think I'm going back.
That is a good question, and I think that I don't know if that actually has been addressed. I will ask that question specifically to our directors and see. I'm not sure if they don't have a state line, if nothing gets taken. So I'll get you an answer to that. Okay, so how invoicing occurs. Once your budget is finalized, this is then entered into ENCORE and set up for invoicing needs. There are a few ways that invoiceables can happen in ENCORE. One, at the study visit level, you can have invoiceable items within a visit. For example, a pregnancy test, an echo, a biopsy. So once you mark that this visit is occurred, those items automatically come over to be invoiced. So pay attention to these items within your visit and mark them NA if they did not happen. If you don't mark these appropriately, these will most likely get billed to the sponsor for reimbursement. For example, pregnancy tests are a big one. If this is a male subject or someone not of childbearing age, we do not see that on the invoicing side. You need to mark it NA. A lot of times I will reach out if I'm not 100% sure, but we cannot see if the subject is male or the age of the subject when we're on the invoicing side going to invoice for something like that. Another way to get invoiceables over is when you're not within the study visit, you have to enter under financial events on the CRA console. So as they occur, for example, monitoring visits, IND letters, IRB amendments, stuff like that. And the last way items can be entered is by adding additional procedures or adding an additional visit. The additional procedures can be added while you're within a visit, or you can add an additional unscheduled visit in general for a subject. Annual fees, startup fees, closeout fees, those are all triggered by the system. You do not have to enter those into ENCORE to get invoiced. They're all tied to CLIC. So once the study is open to accrual, your startup fees automatically get triggered. Note that this means that CLIC needs to be updated even if you use a central IRB. Miscellaneous I always have in there in the financial events as an option. So if for some reason you have something that's not on your dropdown, you can use miscellaneous and just type in a comment. If you're unclear on how to get something into Encore so it can be invoiced to the sponsor, please reach out to myself or the Encore team. So this is an example of the financial events. I'm on the CRA console here. I've clicked there. And I've already clicked on financial events, which is like the fifth one down. And there's also an update button that you click that I've already done. So click the update button and I'm on the drop down of the financial events. And basically, these are all the items in here for this budget that can be entered. So you pick what you need, you put in the actual date that it happened, so the occurred date, and then most of the time you're only going to put a count of one, and some of these items you will need to put a comment. So for example, for a monitoring visit, a lot of times we need to know how many hours were spent. An SAE report, we need to know what subject it was for. And then additional procedures. This is within a visit. So I've pulled up on the CRA console. I went into a specific subject and I pulled up the visit. And at the very bottom, there's a tab that's called additional procedures. So I'm going to click on this tab and add a procedure for a specific subject visit. So what happens when you click on this tab is you get a drop down here, or not a drop down, a box. This specifically is the middle tab is specifically for your protocol. So it should have anything that is happening within your protocol on there. So you should be able to pick. If it's something that's not on your protocol that you need to add in there, you're going to go to the charge master first, try to find it that way. And if it's not in the charge master at all, you can click on that last tab, which is a free text procedure. You have to actually click on the additional procedure tab for this to come over to the invoiceable side. If you just put something in a comment stating you did an extra item with someone, it doesn't come over to be invoiced. We actually would have to go into the CRA console, into the visit to actually read the comment to see that you had something additional done. So you want to add an additional procedure this way. So note that all studies are tied to click status, which means you need to update the study information and click timely, or this could cause issues with invoicing, particularly study startup and study closure. Startup invoices, like I said previously, are triggered by the study being open to accrual. Closeout invoicing is also triggered by the study being in IRB closure. So this must be updated in Click whether or not you're using a central IRB. It's at the very least, the opening and closing of a study. Administrative amendments, if you're using the local IRB, these are tied to Click, and you do not need to enter these separately into Encore. However, if you're using a central IRB, you will need to enter when you have submitted an amendment or continuum review into the financial events for us to bill for the submission fees. And lastly, the Encore policy. This is a requirement to use Encore for any clinical research study. Please note that Encore data entry is mandatory and not optional. Timely and accurate standard accrual data entered by research staff is essential. The data is utilized for invoicing and financial management reconciliation of the study by the clinical research office. This will ensure billing compliance, accurate and timely invoicing, and proper reconciliation of accounts prior to study closure. Noncompliance with the Encore policy will result in suspension of research and award account activities. Lastly, the clinical research office is working on setting up meetings with study coordinators in order to provide some tips on how our systems impact reporting and invoicing. Please reach out to Pam Anderson or myself if you or your study team is interested in setting up a meeting. Our contact information is given on the last slide of this presentation. The official policy for Encore was set out on the listserv and will be uploaded on our website soon. But if you need a copy of this policy, please feel free to reach out to us. So on this last slide, I did add the links to the UB policy for the PI effort, which is the first one. The second one is the UB policy for the residual balances. You can just click on those and be able to read through those. Any more questions? Nope. Alexis, I can't hear you.
Lori was just asking if we'd be able to share the slides, and I know that Marcelle's going to be sending out a survey after the after this. So I don't if we can get a copy of the slides to share with the attendees,
Sure.
and we'll also make sure that any links that are in here when we post the video are clickable links within the description of the video.
Okay, great. Yeah, no problem.
All right, any other questions? Last chance. Okay, well, thank you so much, Rosanne, for all of this information and giving us a bit more understanding of the budgets process. So everyone who's attended, thank you for coming today. We will be, like I said, sending out a survey. Please help us out by filling out the survey. It really takes probably 5 minutes tops to complete, and it helps us to learn what is useful to you and what you may be looking for in the future as far as sessions. And there's a spot for comments. So if you have any ideas of sessions or topics that you are curious about and would like to have a bit more knowledge about, please let us know there, because that will guide our curriculum. So there are many thank yous to you, Rosanne, in the comments if you're seeing your chat. Everyone have a great day, and thank you again.